Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hey, how you doing? It's Thursday. We got a playoff game to play in St. Louis. My sister at 7:06 this morning sent me a picture of the front page of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And their entire front page said something like, I'm already forgetting what it is, something like game on or let's play ball or something like that. And then I look at our front page and there's nothing. Maybe it's a difference of, it's their first playoff game. We feel like we've already been in the playoffs because of I don't know, but jeez. So the battle shall be joined in 7 hours. But who's counting? Okay. I'm going to try to keep from getting shrill, but it's difficult. Difficult. I've been trying to avoid too much news on the shutdown and the negotiations and that kind of thing because it's so maddening. And I happened this morning to hear a soundbite from I believe a congressman from Indiana. And he was saying something like, well, he knows that they're not going to stop Obamacare and it's not about that anymore, the reason they've done this. But we got to get something, he said. We got to have something to show for this. We can't be disrespected. That's what he said. We can't be disrespected. And I don't know what we're going to get. And I'm thinking, this is what? We can't be disrespected when you warrant no respect, sir. It shows the sort of like knuckle-dragging level, the primitive lizard reptilian brain level that so many of these members of the Congress of the United States of America. I forget what the noun was, so I'm not sure exactly what the verb now should be. Possess? Have? I don't know. Anyway, you get the drift. So Obamacare is happening. And something else is too. Obamacare is happening. And I've just got a few little items that I want to share with you about that. Because, again, to me, it's mind-boggling. For both of these things I'm about to tell you, we move below the Mason-Dixon line. First, journeying to Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, interestingly, of none of the southern states of this country, what we think of as the Confederacy, Not one of those states, well, one of those states, of all those states, set up a marketplace, a Medicaid marketplace, expanded Medicaid in advance of the law, which is, of course, a big part of the law. That was Arkansas. Who knew Arkansas was the progressive state down there? Arkansas did. Every other state in the South declined the extraordinarily generous offer of the federal government to fully fund their Medicaid expansions until the year, I think, 2015. And then after that, the promise was we will continue to fund it, and it will never drop below 90% of funding coming from the feds. So we're not asking you to do much, just set up the damn apparatus. The Confederacy said no, except for Arkansas. Okay, so I just want to give you the story of one guy in Arkansas. He's 61 years old. His name is Butch Matthews. He's self-employed, and he's been having to buy his own insurance for years and years and years. His insurance rates and his premiums have been, as just not surprise you, going up and up and up and up, so much so that his rate as of last week was, this is what he was paying for his health insurance, $1,069 a month with a $10,000 deductible. And it doesn't cover medication. I don't know what it does cover. It doesn't cover doctor's visits. What the hell does it cover? His funeral expenses? So he puts all that money out for what? This is before Obamacare. This guy goes online Monday or Tuesday, whenever the first day was, and sees if maybe there's something better. Guess what? Oh, yeah, he now has not only, well, he will start as soon as he signed up for it, he now has a truly better plan. Instead of paying a doctor $150 every time he sees a doctor, he's now going to pay $8. His monthly premium is nothing. Nothing? His new coverage will cost him absolutely nothing in monthly premiums after factoring in federal subsidies. And his deductible has dropped from $10,000 to $750. All in all, when you do the math, Obamacare has, like that, saved this man more than $10,000 a year and given him so much more access to good health, preventive care, and medical care than he has ever had before. Caller, go ahead.
How you doing?
I'm fine.
Hey, do you feel sorry for that guy?
No. Now?
Anytime.
Do I feel...
When he was paying a high premium.
Well, yeah, I do.
I don't.
Why not?
I'll tell you why. Because I know what goes on out there with these self-employed people. They rip the government out of so much tax dollars while a person that's working is paying the ride and paying the load. It's unbelievable. If you only would see it, oh, it's terrible. I don't feel sorry for any small business. I really don't, because they got accountants, they've got people that get them money back.
Well,
it's unbelievable what goes on out there.
Well, okay.
I knew the tax collector up in where I live, and these people, they're claiming they only made $5,000 a year, and they make $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year. It's unbelievable how they cheat. But hey, that's the way it is.
Okay. Well,
we'll see you.
All right. Well, I think there's small business, and there's small business, and there's a lot of different people, and I wouldn't condemn them all with such a broad stroke myself. Okay. But here's what I want to tell you about this guy. So Obamacare has the level of stress that it has lifted from his shoulders is amazing. Financial stress, emotional stress, worry about his health, his family's health, all of this. Listen to this. He says, I'm a Republican. I'm still a very strong Republican, he says. But I'm happy this came along. This is going to be a great help. My advice to others would be take your time and study and not just go by what you hear. Actually check the facts. What I want to know, Butch Matthews, Little Rock, Arkansas, is how, after you've seen how your party has misled you, lied to you about Obamacare, how you're still, once you take advantage of the largesse of the democratically run national government, you still can say, I still am a very strong Republican. Because if you were such a strong Republican, you wouldn't accept this. You're too, as a strong Republican, self-reliant. You don't take handouts. You make your own way. So this is what happens. Democrats give, Republicans take, and then they complain and vote for more Republicans. Go ahead, please, caller.
Hey, Lynn, this is Mike from D.C. This is how they rationalize it in their mind. Republicans don't pick a party that helps them. They pick a party like we pick the Steelers. No matter how down the Steelers are, we're still a Steeler fan, right? So they're equating not what's in their best interest or which party helps them, but which party they have been all their life, and nothing's going to change them from that, even the facts.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I think you're right.
So people who move from Pittsburgh will always be Pittsburgh Steelers fans. People who take advantage of every benefit that the Democratic Party provides for them will still be Republicans.
I can't argue with you. Thank you.
Crazy.
Crazy.
It's just crazy.
It's just crazy. Thank you.
Okay, have a good day.
Thank you, you too. And it's ultimately just self-defeating. It's ridiculous. There's a gap. There's a cognitive chasm between what they must believe and what reality presents to them. And it's a kind of perceptual just sort of, it's perceptually upside down. It's they see. I don't know. It's beyond belief. Okay, that was one. Now I'm going to let's stay below the Mason-Dixon line here, because as I said, that guy, a lucky man who should be toasting Democrats and looking to vote for Democrats everywhere he can, is luckily happened to reside in the one state that did set up one of these exchanges, and he was, and not that you can't in the other states because the feds have set up something, but it's not as good. If there's not an expansion of Medicaid, a whole bunch of Americans who are uninsured will not still have access. That's the ugly little truth about this revolutionary Affordable Care Act. And it's brought to you by the Supreme Court of the United States of America. A big shocker here. When the Supreme Court found that the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was indeed constitutional. It did, however, in its opinion, allow states that wanted to opt out to choose not to expand their Medicaid programs. So if the Supreme Court had left the Affordable Care Act alone, like it was, we would not be seeing what we are about to see, which is millions of Americans who thought that now they will finally have access, but who live in a state run by Neanderthals called Republicans, who refused to expand their Medicaid programs. These people will find that they, in fact, do not have access. Let me explain this a little bit better if I can. The 26 states, think of that, and ours is one of them. Ours is one of them because the voters of Pennsylvania, in their wisdom, have given us a Republican-controlled legislature and a Republican governor who now they can't stand, but that won't keep them from voting for the next one, Republican. The 26 states, including Pennsylvania, that have rejected Medicaid expansion, get this, are home to more than half of the country's population, but are home to 2/3 of the country's poor. Now, that makes sense because we know Republicans invariably represent the poorest people. And they screw them left and right. We know this. We can't figure it out. We've never been able to quite comprehend it. But the 26 states that passed on Obamacare, because they're run by knuckle-dragging Republicans, they are home to 2/3 of the poor of America, the uninsured of America, the overwhelmingly black single mothers. 60% of the country's uninsured working poor are in those states. Who are we talking about here? We're talking about cashiers. We're talking about cooks. We're talking about nurses' aides and retail sales clerks and waiters and waitresses and janitors and delivery truck drivers and maids and housekeepers. You know who we're talking about. We're talking about people who work their tails off and still are living in poverty and do not have insurance. And if they have the misfortune of living in a Republican-controlled state, they will not, many of them, tons of them, millions of them, have access to Obamacare. I give you a quote. This is from Dr. Jack Gelger, who is founder of a model for how communities can make sure that all people have access to health care. I believe he's taken, if this is the guy I'm thinking of, he's taken this model to Africa and other places, and it's worked so well there. And then he realized that in his own hometown, somewhere in the, Confederacy, that Americans were in need of this. And so he knows how to get good care to poor people. Here's what he says. The irony of these states that are rejecting Medicaid expansion, many of them southern states, that it's that these are the very places where the concentration of poverty and the lack of health insurance are the most acute. It is their populations that have the highest burden of illness and costs to the entire national health care system. And let me just reiterate, every state in the Deep South, with the exception of Arkansas, which I believe has a Democratic governor for some reason, has rejected the expansion. I'm looking at a map of it. It's just unbelievable. There it is, the friggin' Confederacy. Want to know why they're so backward? Have been, will be, forever will be. And then there's a racial component here that has not been talked about. 6 out of 10 African Americans live in the states that do not have expanded Medicaid. 60% of all African Americans live in these states. In Mississippi alone, 56% of all poor and uninsured adults are black, although they account for just 38% of the state's population. A physician who has worked among the poor in Mississippi for years says this: the history of segregation and violence against blacks still informs the way people see one another, making some whites reluctant to support programs that they believe benefit blacks. Listen to what Dr. Aaron Shirley says. It's amazing. If you look at the history of Mississippi, he says, politicians have used race to oppose minimum wage, Head Start, all the social programs. This is just the most recent. It's a tactic that appeals to people who would rather suffer themselves than see a black person benefit. Now, you see, I can't get my head around that. Now, I think this guy knows this is what he's lived. He's seen it. He knows it. That's just amazing to me. And the people who make that calculation, consciously or unconsciously, probably pretty, well, I don't know, consciously or unconsciously. That's a classic cutting off your nose to spite your face. That's insanity. Harming yourself just so you don't benefit them. Wow. If you look at the history of Mississippi, these politicians have used race to oppose the minimum wage. You don't want those black people getting paid what you're getting paid. Head Start, you didn't want their children getting paid. Obamacare, it's a tactic that appeals to people who would rather suffer themselves than see a black person benefit. I'm looking at a quote from a woman who lives in Mississippi. She makes $11,000 a year. Claritha Briscoe. She's a cook at a convenience store. Guess what? In Mississippi, $11,000 a year makes her too rich to qualify for Medicaid. she's rolling in it. She's got $11,000 a year. State ain't letting her on the Medicaid rolls. Absolutely not. But it turns out that $11,000 she earns is not enough to get subsidies on the healthcare exchange. What? This woman's had a heart attack. She was given charity care at a hospital. She was put on blood pressure meds. She can't afford them. Here's her quote. I skip months on my blood pressure pills. She's 48 years old. I skip months. I buy them when I can afford them. Let me tell you something. In other words, we are willing in this country to sentence people to death. To sentence people to death because we will not pay them living wages nor give them reasonable access to basic medical care. I don't know about you, but I take blood pressure pills. I can no more imagine not dutifully taking my pill every day so that when I go and get my blood pressure taken, it's like really wonderful. But it wouldn't be. If I couldn't afford my pills, I might well not be here squawking at you right now. I'd be dead. I take a bunch of other pills, too, because I am not a great physical specimen. And they're pills I need. For asthma, for the lack of a thyroid gland, for all of these things. What happens? And I'm just lucky. I have the means. How can we live in a country that consigns our neighbors by virtue of the fact that they don't have money to live in literal fear of their lives? True fear. Reasonable fear, not paranoid fear. I cannot imagine living like this. I'm sorry. I said I was going to try to keep my cool. It is really hard to comprehend the Republican brain. It is really hard. There is a capacity in it for a sense of stingy meanness, lack of empathy, lack of any sense of connection to strangers, to the stranger, to anyone different from oneself. I cannot comprehend this Republican brain. But as the congressman from Indianapolis said, or Indiana, wherever the hell that nitwit was from, hey, we don't want to be disrespected. Well, let me tell you, buddy. Disrespect doesn't even come close to what I feel for you. We'll take a break.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Go to the all-new BergBargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. This month, big discounts on your favorite Halloween attractions. Supplies are limited. The all-new BergBargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains, BergBargains.com.
Come to Little's for all of your back-to-school needs. Little's has everything for all ages to stay in style for this upcoming school season. Check out the large selection from Doc Marten, Steve Madden, UGG, Clarks, Lely Kelly, New Balance, and much, much more. Don't forget to come visit this season's colorful handbag selection as well. Little Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okay. I was heartened somewhat to see that the Post-Gazette editorial page today called out the local Republican congressmen here who are part of this insanity. Keith Rothfuss, Sewickley, Tim Murphy, Upper St. Clair, Mike Kelly, Butler, Bill Schuster, Blair County. They are representing, supposedly, the people of their districts here in western Pennsylvania, and they are part of this group who have now taken hostage the government of the United States. And I don't know. I mean, I know someone wrote a letter to the paper today and said that you should contact them. They gave Rothfuss's number. But he doesn't listen to anybody who's not in his district, I suspect. I seriously do not know how these people, how they sleep at night. I do not know. I do not comprehend it. Okay. So, excuse me. The shutdown brought to you again by these same, help. What are we? This was in the Wall Street Journal today. It's just a little something, nothing big. This is not a federal worker. This is a woman named Lisa Goldenberg, president of Delaware Steel Company of Pennsylvania. That's based in Fort Washington, PA. And she just lost a big order because the buyer couldn't get the government paperwork done that it needed, and she lost this huge order yesterday. She said, the shutdown is killing me, and it is slowing down an already slow recovery. My guess is somebody who owns a steel company is not necessarily a liberal Democrat, but Republicans don't care. They in their sort of like flinging their arms around tantrum hurt all kinds of people, including their own supposed base, which I've pointed out they hurt all the time, and the base somehow doesn't comprehend that. Companies in the private sector are laying people off because of this, because they do maybe contract work for the government, or they can't get they can't get the kind of paperwork done. Small businesses are hurting because they depend on federal agencies. But I got to tell you, we are being held hostage. What was it? Somebody was tweeting something the other day, which is, I can't quite remember, but it's something like it was a conversation, which essentially like, okay, hostage taker says, okay, you give me something or I'm going to cut your finger off. And you say, well, no, I'm going to cut. And how you keep saying, I'm going to cut your leg off. I'm going to do. And then when you keep refusing to give them whatever it is they want, they say that you're not compromising or you're negotiating. What? Excuse me? You have a gun to my head and you're threatening to cut my leg off. I'm supposed to then negotiate with you? And then, what? Their own actions, this nonsense with the World War II veteran memorial. I cannot believe that our media even bother to cover that, because that is a manufactured bunch of crap. National monuments, national parks closed down because the government doesn't have any money because the Republicans won't. Yeah. And then the Republicans go down with all the photographers and say, look at what has happened here. Oh, the shame of it. World War II veterans unable to get to... Children are going hungry. I don't care if a World War II veteran can't get to a hunk of concrete. Good God Almighty, and you're the ones who closed it down. Okay, I'm screaming. I'm sorry. Caller, go ahead. Caller? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to say that I have heard nobody say this, but in my mind, the Affordable Care Act, the individual, like the mandate, is a democratic compromise. Mm-hmm. The plan itself, Romney Care, is itself a compromise to like a single payer.
Of course it is. And it's a very imperfect compromise because we couldn't do what really made sense to do. Right.
Right. But nobody is saying that. It's like, wait, we need a compromise. It's like, wait a second. That's why this is a law. It is the compromise.
Right. Oh,
okay.
Listen, bye. You see, the problem with that caller is an informed person who's trying to suggest that facts matter. We already compromised. We compromised so that we have this ridiculous kind of imperfect, silly kind of crazy, jerry-rigged Rube Goldberg system because it was the only one the Republicans would let us have. And they like screwing it up, making it Rube Goldberg-esque, so that then when it doesn't quite work like a finely tuned machine, they can say, see, government can't do anything. As they're busily unscrewing nuts and bolts so the thing might fall apart. They are unconscionable. They are shameless. I've had it. I mean, I have so had it. And I know, I'm not alone. Okay, we need a little help. You know, it's time like this when, you know, you need comfort food, you need to eat. It's true. Well, maybe you don't, but I do. And, you know, I'm going to blame the Republicans for making me fat. Yeah, because I get so freaked that my only comfort is in food. And I was so thrilled to see that Mitt Romney's wife has come out with a cookbook today. And in it, she has, I guess, one of the Romney's favorite sandwiches. Wait till you hear this. She says it's comfort food. Are you ready? 2 slices of, no shock here, white bread. All right? Wouldn't want any of that, you know, color bread. 2 slices of white bread, peanut butter, and fluff.
Marshmallow fluff?
And marshmallow fluff. It's called a fluffer nutter.
Ew.
Now, fluff is, I would think, something with absolutely no nutritional value whatsoever, plus probably unbelievable chemicals in it. It is marshmallows whipped up with God knows what. So this is, isn't this classic? Is this classic? That's a sandwich? That's what WASPs think comfort food is? But that's what rich white folks eat. Good God. Peanut butter and whipped marshmallows between 2 soft pieces of Wonder Bread.
It's probably delicious.
I don't care. It's an outrage. Yes, the book is The Romney Family Table. Oh, here. See, I'm being so unfair to Republicans in general. Wait a minute here. Let me... Right here in Harrisburg, the Republicans are working to get something done here. Let's see. What we got going now? We got the federal shutdown. We got a potential huge default crisis that could harm the entire economy of the planet. We got bridges falling apart. We got we got troubles. But there are three Republican legislators, and one right here from Elizabeth Township, Rick Saccone. I am so glad these guys are on top of this. He and two other Republicans have a bill that they are really pushing, which would protect the display of the motto, "In God We Trust," and mandate that it be given a prominent display in all schools. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? All the problems. And they still want to piddle around, I'm sorry. It's now, I guess, considered our national motto, "In God We Trust," but it wasn't before the mid-'50s when, in the spasm of, again, Republican-induced McCarthyism. God, you Republicans! God! The whole history of this country is digging out from under the crap that you create. So anyway, in a spasm of that, we decided we had to have this motto, "In God We Trust." We had a motto before, "In God We Trust." You know what it was? It was in Latin, granted. E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. But you know what? That's not true. Because Republicans don't like to be part of the rest of us. They like to cull and divide us off so that there's 47% who are freeloaders, so that there are those illegal immigrants and those gay people and those women and those. You can't have a United States of America with these lunatics in possession of as much power as they have. So this is what Republicans do when they are elected. They make sure that there will now be time taken up by legislators with an awful lot of very serious issues on their plate to instead argue back and forth about whether or not every school in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania should have on prominent display, "In God We Trust." And I just want to say this. If, in fact, they believe that, if they do trust in God, then he doesn't need plaques mandated in every school. He's got it covered. Which allows you to get back to your real jobs, if you even know what they are. Break number 2.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Hi, Lynn. Les Ludwig, your scandal-free independent candidate for mayor of Pittsburgh, the founder of a program that produces revenue opportunities for government, the best long-term news in town. No longer the usual wait for taxes to go up at budget time. Pittsburgh's home, and I've brought a new way to finance government to city council. That thinking is spreading like fire, with 7 cities from Philly to L.A. building finance programs based on it. An example, one community in California has signed a long-term $600,000 per year contract with a soft drink company. Right now, we have over $1 million that may be used to reduce taxes right here in Pittsburgh. Stay tuned as I work as your mayor, building new thinking for a better future. Vote Ludwig, the only scandal-free independent candidate.
Paid for by Les Ludwig for mayor of Pittsburgh.
This week's Pittsburgh City paper previewing the 2013 Carnegie International is available now. Pick up one today for our special Halloween guide. Plus, Jerry Seinfeld, Celtic Thunder, Soul Asylum, and The Legend of Zelda. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone with GPS-enabled music, event, and restaurant listings at citypapermobile.com.
Imagine a festival illuminated by the glitter of stars like Steven Spielberg, Yoko Ono, James Franco, Megan Mullally, Gloria Steinem, Miranda Otto, Quincy Jones, Natasha Lyonne, Treat Williams, and Leslie Jordan. You don't have to imagine it. You just have to get real. Real Q is Pittsburgh's annual festival of films about the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. It's returning to the Harris Theater October 11th to the 19th with a really diverse collection of great movies. This year's Real Q includes the sexy Free Fall about a passionate and scandalous love affair, the hilarious GBF about the benefits of having a gay best friend, and the romantic comedy Heterosexual Jill about the complicated social life of a lesbian filmmaker. Once again, Comcast Xfinity subscribers can preview nearly all of the Real Q feature films from the comfort of their living room with their on-demand remote, and everyone can log on to www.realq.org. That's www.reelq.org.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Oh, okay. So, I'm just going to bring this up because it's just so bizarre. I don't know why we can't quite get things right or reasonable. I don't know if you noticed that, not that many of you really care, but at Carnegie Hall in New York City, they had to cancel. I guess is it this weekend's? There was a big, huge fundraiser with it was to have been last night. Featured the Philadelphia Orchestra, violinist Joshua Bell, blah blah blah. People paid tons of money. Got canceled. You know why? Because the stagehand union struck. And then I thought, well, wow, I wonder what's going on there. So I looked into it a little more. You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. For one thing, Local 1 of the stagehand union, man, whew, I wish I had this card. There are only 5 full-time stagehands. That's it.
Shut up.
No, 5 for Carnegie Hall in New York. 5. And I understand that they probably like to keep it that way because of the money they make. Listen to what the average... Listen, these 5 guys. Listen to what their average take-home is a year. Are you ready? Jess, you sitting down? $400,000 a year. $400,000 a year. Now, I got to tell you something. It's unusual when you hear of people who are working as, like, essentially blue-collar workers making that kind of money. And I'd like to say, all right, we got a little of our own back. On the other hand, that's nuts. I mean, you could... And they make that much because they control all the overtime. They do well, and they make that much because they work generally about 60 hours a week. They earn about $360,000 and then an additional $90,000 in other kinds of compensation and benefits. And as I said, there's 5 full-time members. Oh, heck, if that's all I was getting paid, I'd strike too. Well, is there anywhere where sanity is prevailing in our economy? Is there anywhere? I don't want the execs and the people who don't deserve all those huge salaries. I don't think they should make that. I don't think 5 stagehands should make $400,000 a year either. Here's what happened. Apparently, the Carnegie is adding on, and they're going to have this big educational wing. Well, there'll be practice rooms and things where, educational events will happen. And the management said that they will not allow the stagehands to have, access to that new facility. So the stagehands struck, understandably, because, unions, you guard your turf. You do. You guard your turf. But $400,000, ladies and gentlemen. $400,000. Oh, God. Marcy is telling me to calm down. It's okay, Marcy. As I said, I am on my meds. Lynn, you are working yourself up, and us listeners too. I have made myself step away from reading too much about those lunatic Republicans, or I would be as worked up as you are. But everything you say here, one cannot help but get worked up about. If they truly care about this country, I do not want them to cause you or me a heart attack because we are so passionate about how we feel, about how they are tearing this country apart. But, as Marcy says, calm down. I get so worked up when I try to email these Republican fools that I never complete the email because I understand when you do not want to talk about this every day, and I'm glad you don't. Thank you. Thanks for everything you have shared. Thanks, Marcy. I thought I had some pretty good information to share. So there. Okay. Caller, hi.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Hey, can I do a public service announcement since you're talking so much about blood pressure today?
Of course. Yeah.
I too have blood pressure issues. So in an effort to be informed and to keep myself out of this crazy healthcare system, I started doing a little research. And I found that the Mayo Clinic did a study, and 70% of medical professionals who administer blood pressure exams do it incorrectly.
Yeah.
And you therefore have a higher reading than your blood pressure actually is. Your elbow is supposed to be at the level of your heart.
Your elbow is?
Your elbow. So your arm is supposed to be up. And when I was discussing this with my wife,
it never is.
She said, "Wow, that explains why her physician's assistant always stands in front of her and puts her hand under her armpit and holds her arm that way." While she has a cup on and she is taking her blood pressure.
Okay.
70% of them administer it improperly. And if you have the chance, do it that way.
Okay.
And you will be amazed at the difference in the blood pressure rating.
Well, I have noticed that, if I go in and, the nurse will do my blood pressure and maybe it's a little high, the doctor will look at it and he'll say, well, here, we'll take it again at the end of the session. And, it'll be, totally different. I don't know. Who the hell knows?
Well, but here's the thing. Those are those variables, and they all talk about those. But this is actually, I forget, I'm trying to remember the quote from the Mayo Clinic report, but it was unquestionably, blood pressure should be taken with the elbow raised at the level of the heart.
Well, I will.
And I told my wife, how many people are out there are on medication that don't need to be on medication?
Well,
and all those meds have side effects.
Oh, I know. I do know I need it, but yeah.
So give it a shot. It's an interesting thing.
Thank you.
And I thank you for allowing me to say that.
And I thank you for saying it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Wow. Okay. Well, I feel like I'm exhausted. I'm like, all right, I'm spent. I'm done. I live only for the game this afternoon. By the way, the game tomorrow is on the MLB network, which a lot of people don't have access to. I don't have that. Yeah. What's that about? Anyway, you'll be at work anyway. I will. But what the hell's that about? That's nuts. Okay. So I do personally have just one more little story to tell you, and this is another shutdown story, and so many people that are furloughed, out of work, impacted in some way by the recalcitrance and insanity and irresponsibility of the Republicans in the House. I do want to say that it's not just bipeds. I have a story about quadrupeds, our mammalian friends of ours who have been furloughed as well because of the shutdown. I'm looking at a picture of one, and man, this guy looks very concerned. It is what I'm looking at is a Nubian goat. And an entire flock of these cute little goats. They got real long ears. A whole flock of these goats had a contract with the federal government. Well, why shouldn't they? And it's because they have a skill, or it's not even a skill, it's just something that they do that you and I wouldn't. They have a hankering. They love to eat poison ivy. Huh. Now, obviously it does not affect them like it affects humans. So if you have an issue with poison ivy, and apparently the federal government did at a facility in Sandy Hook, New Jersey, where there was a historic Fort Hancock mortuary battery whose long guns, it says here, protected New York Harbor for decades. Anyway, that is some place where people can go, and it's like it's a national park. People go in there and say hello to the battery. And it is just overrun by poison ivy. So that the government was roping it off, didn't want anybody coming near there because there's no way they could get an eradication effort going. And this is a green effort, obviously. It's not pesticides. This is not herbicides. This is you bring in the Nubians. You bring in the little floppy-eared goats and say, salad bar's open. And these goats have been chomping away most of the summer, 28 of them. They usually live in upstate New York, and they have pretty much eradicated the poison ivy, but they have been furloughed. So apparently the guy who's in charge of it said that he walked around yesterday to sort of take a tally of how much poison ivy he saw, and he said, in a 45-minute walk, I think I found just 12 leaves. There was essentially zero poison ivy. I would consider this totally successful. So at least they pretty much finished up the job before they were shipped back to their home in New York State. But so there you have it. Government contract workers. I don't know what picture you have in your head of a government contract worker. I had a certain picture maybe, but it didn't involve floppy ears and cloven hooves and poison ivy eating. But there it is. Okay, so that's it. One other quickie, and then I really am, I think, done. This also a letter to the editor from a very educated man in McCandless, Art Nussbaum. I say I know he's very educated because he has a bunch of letters after his name, including MD and JD, which means he is a medical doctor, and he is a Juris Doctor, which means this guy, got it all covered. I mean, if he had a Jewish mother, and with a name like Art Nussbaum, I think he did, she would have been so happy because, Jewish mothers, you should be a doctor, a lawyer. Art's both. A doctor, Art, my son Art. He's a doctor, he's a lawyer, he's an MD, a JD, a this and a that. It's true. So anyway, he's talking about the adjuncts, which, of course, we were talking about the other day. The professors over at Duquesne and other universities who do most of the teaching and who get crumbs. And again, let's imagine, okay, so a law school adjunct professor makes like $3,500 for a class he teaches. And I just want you again to contrast that with the $400,000 that the stagehand at Carnegie Hall is getting. And I ask you, is something wrong with this equation? I think so. Anyway. So here's what Art Nussbaum says. And he's done the math. And this is in our interview with Dan Kovalik the other day, who is with the steelworkers and attempting to organize these adjuncts. I kept trying to get at this too, the craziness of the mathematics involved in this business model that Duquesne and other universities have taken on. Art Nussbaum, MD, JD, says this: the most valuable courses I had in law school were taught by adjuncts who taught based on real-world professional and practical experience. During my last semester, I paid $11,754 for 9 credit hours, which comes to $1,306 per credit hour. Or for a 3-credit course, that would be $3,918. 2 of the 3 courses I took were taught by adjuncts, both of whom were highly accomplished attorneys and excellent dedicated teachers. So do the math. One of the courses had approximately 35 enrollees. Okay, 35 times 3,918 equals $137,130 in tuition for that one class for the law school. The other course had about 18 students, so we'll do the math there. That's $70,524. And you add all that up, and that's a hunk of change, right? Stop and think that this one student in the class, he paid almost $4,000 for that class. And we now know that the professor who taught the class didn't even get that. A professor with 35 students, all paying $4,000 over an entire semester. Duquesne doesn't even hand over one of those students' tuition for that one class to the professor. Again, how do they sleep at night? How do these people sleep at night who run this country, who run the universities, who decide what a business model is, who decide what people should make for the labor that they put out, who decide that people who work their tails off but don't make money should not be able to afford medications that they need to live. Who are these people? I bet they go to church. I bet they consider themselves good people. I despise them. I do. I'm sorry. I despise them. Okay. That's not a very nice way to end, is it? Well, then let's end thusly. Go Bucks! Woo!
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.